Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I am so excited about tonight. This is session 2 of Sexual Trauma and Restorative Services Global Mission and Training. And we kicked off last Saturday bright and early at 7:30 a.m. in the morning. And the training room, the virtual room, was filled with people early in the morning getting the information. And so now we are doing it tonight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, my time. I know we have a global audience, and so people are here from different countries. People are here from different time zones. I just see my sister Nia pop in from Perth, Australia. And so this is a global training and people patching literally from around the world. And we have a dynamic speaker tonight. She's here, she's in the room. She's gorgeous for number one, and she has a great, amazing story that she's going to share with you all tonight. For those who do not know me, I am the founder of Tarina Ali Therapeutic Services, and STARS GMT is just one of the trainings that I do underneath of my company. This particular program is 3 years old. We started out kicking this off. We had 40 attendees the very first time we kicked it off. And we did it in Abuja, Nigeria, and Lagos, where we actually did the mission part of it, where we went to a home for girls who were involved in human sex trafficking, rehabilitating. And so we did a mission project there, which was an art project. And so if you continue to take my trainings, I most times include the arts into it because arts is a great therapeutic modality. Everyone won't get it from lecture styles. And for me, I enjoy lectures, but at some point, if they're too long, I kind of tune out. And so we have a holistic approach to how we do our trainings. Our trainings are going to be fun. They're going to be interactive, and you will learn something. And the main thing about this training is that it is practical. There's no point of being involved in any training and you can't use the information. And so this information is practical and it is user friendly. And tonight I had put a message out in my community. I do poetry. And once again, I said the arts is a great medium to get messages across to people. And I wanted to include poetry into what I was doing. So I went into my poetry community and I got an awesome referral. And she is here tonight and I'm excited about it. Not only is she going to share some of her stories, which I'm not going to tell it, I'm going to let you tell it. But just hearing a brief part of her story, I was on the edge of my seat. It is that it could be a Lifetime movie. It could be a Hallmark movie. It just has so many ebbs and flows to it. And so stay tuned to tonight. Get you some pencil and paper, or if you take notes in your phone or your iPad, because you will learn something tonight. So please have something to chronicle these notes for tonight. If you were a part of the upgrade experience, I encourage you to do it. If you did not get the upgrade experience, I encourage you to do it. Go back in once we're finished. You can upgrade to the level 2 access or the level 3 access, where you actually get a therapeutic guidebook. You get information on all the speakers that we have. And then next week concludes, and we're actually having a therapeutic writing course from one of the speakers, Wanza Leftwich. Everyone won't share verbally, but some people will share in a journal. And so we're going to talk about the importance of therapeutic journaling. We're going to talk about the importance of music therapy. We listen to songs, music moves the soul. Sometimes people get a message from a song. So we're going to have a mini concert, but that is part of the upgrade experience. And so I encourage you to go back and register to get those upgrades because you can use those resources, and you can go to www.tarinaali.com /events is where you went today to get the information. And so without further ado, by way of the Longhorn State, by way of Houston, Texas, we have our speaker here tonight who has a story of victory. People tend to think that this topic is too heavy or gloom and doom, but you do not have to look like what you've been through. And as you all can see that she's here, she's alive and she's well, but she has a story of victory and she is a survivor. And we're happy to have her here tonight. And so I'm going to patch her in. You'll find a way to be able to connect with her. And people are hopping in. So we're glad that people are continuously to join us. And so I'm going to unmute her so we can get it started with her sharing on tonight.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Tarina, for inviting me to be on your platform. My name is Michelle Lynette. I am a poet, rising businesswoman, philanthropist, and I love people. I have a great love for people. And so I've recently rewritten a poetry book that I wrote 12 years ago. It's called Poetic Soul, Unspoken Roots, and I did an anniversary edition. And so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to speak from the book because it's going to kind of take us into the start of my journey with the story that I'm going to tell. So here's a copy of my book. And it's a very nice book. I've put a lot of work into it, and I don't just touch on heavy topics. I have very light topics as well, because I speak from places of politics, love, pain, betrayal, just a wide range of things that people should be able to connect to with where we are in life today. So I am going to go ahead and get started. And the name of the piece that I'm going to read is called She Never Said a Mumbling Word. And this is kind of like the intro into my story. And it goes. As they enter the room, he throws her across the bed, spitting his saliva against her head, telling her he's lusted for her ever since he laid eyes on her, ripping away her sweet innocence, never allowing her screams of voice to be heard. She's begging and pleading, please don't do this to me. I'm only 15 years old. Why can't you just let me be? He forces her back down. Ooh, give me a second. He forces her back down and says, you belong to me now. His preparation brings deterioration to her soul. She's yelling to the top of her lungs, God, help me. I'm too young to even know. Precious tears began to flow. They were the emotions slowly letting go. In the back of her mind, she wanted to die. The reality of her life is tearing her up inside. Now that he's done making her feel cheap, he tells her that she's the best meat he's had since ground beef. Disgusted and ashamed, she wanted to change her name. Afterwards, she never says a mumbling word because he told her no one would ever believe the unheard. Therefore, she clings to her soul since that's all she has to feel whole. The greatest story never told. Promiscuous and wanting to know what love is, and now here comes life's challenges. Seeking the necessary help never changed the pain she felt. She just wants to be accepted. Her heart can't take constant rejection. Somehow, deaf ears weren't listening, so she gave up on living. And though no one ever knew all the stress she had gone through, she decides to no longer hold on to her pride, and she just lets go as her soul dies. With a new beginning and a fresh face, you would never know her struggling race. She is the familiar voice that was unheard because she never said a mumbling word. Thank you. Okay, Serena.
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay, that piece was phenomenal. I'm trying to soak it in. I know we need to move on. Just so profound and so relevant. If you can share with us, and it'll lead into your story. How did you come up with this piece? Is it just tell us? Yeah, I'll just let you share. How did you come up with this piece, and when did you write this piece?
Okay, so my story begins at the age of 14, actually. I was growing up in the church with my grandmother. My grandparents raised me. So we were in church all the time. And so the church that we attended, it was a family church. And the pastor there, he pretty much had a good reputation with everyone there, especially the youth. And so I started to notice how he would compliment me pretty often. But, at 14, you really don't think nothing of that. It's a compliment. And so one day we had a program at church, and it required all of us to dress up. And so I was dressed up in like a formal dress, pink. And so I was coming down the aisle, and he was standing kind of closer to the end of the row, and he saw me. And the look that he gave on his face, his face kind of lit up. He smiled, and he told me that I looked beautiful. So I said thank you and kind of left it there and, continued on. So from there, I noticed the compliments began to grow from there. So fast forwarding to how the situation transpired, I would have to say, a year later, because the incident happened when I was 15. So we were on a church trip where every year the church would go to the Baptist conventions that would be held at different places. And we were about to, we had our day planned out. Everybody was busy. And so, again, it wasn't uncommon for him to be close to the youth because that's just how he was. And so one night we were, everybody was getting ready to, settle down for the evening. And unfortunately, my situation didn't turn out the way that I thought it was going to turn out. And so I had gone to say good night, and he invited me into his room, and I thought it was kind of awkward at that moment, but he assured me that everything was fine, nothing was going to happen, that I could come in, and he just wanted to talk to me, about how I was enjoying the trip. And so it started with me talking about the trip. And next thing I know, he started to say inappropriate things. And then, of course, light bulb goes off in my head like, I think I'm about to get into a situation that's not good. So I was uncomfortable, and I let him know I was uncomfortable and that I should leave. And that's when it changed. The whole situation changed, and unfortunately I was taken advantage of in that moment. So not only did I feel very bad, but I had to go back and hold this with me for the duration of the trip. And when we got back home from the trip, um, I didn't say anything about it. I kept it to myself, and I felt like it would just go away. So he sees me at church. He's acting as though nothing happened, and still very friendly. And then one Saturday we were having like a youth program at the. It wasn't like a program, but it was more like activities that would go on at the church on the weekend. And so we were all outside, playing basketball, and that was one of the things that he would do. He would come out and engage, with the youth. So um, needless to say, he asked if I would come up to his office because he wanted to talk to me about the situation that transpired between us. I was uncomfortable with going up there alone, but he assured me that, nothing was going to happen. We were at the church. So I'm like, okay. So I go to his office, and he proceeded to close the door. And so I said, well, maybe you should leave the door open. And so he's like, no, we're going to close the door for privacy reasons. And so I said, okay. So he started to talk about what happened on the church trip. And then before I knew it, he was back making advances at me in his office. And so, unfortunately, a fight broke out between us, with me trying to defend myself from it happening again at the church. And so from there, I got out of the office and I ran back, outside with everybody else. And at that point, I was trying to keep myself together, but it was a little difficult to keep myself together. And I was just ready to go home. And from there, I started being hesitant to go to church, and I would find reasons not to go to church. And of course, my grandmother, she didn't know what was going on. She was just trying to figure out why was I so hesitant to go to church. So I started getting involved in a lot of extracurriculum activities at school so that I wouldn't have to go back to church. And so one Sunday afternoon, we had second service, and there was a very close friend of mine that was there with me. And I proceeded to tell her the story about what happened. And I asked her not to say anything. I let her know that no one knew. She was the first person to know. And she ended up telling this gentleman that I was communicating with at the time. She told him. And when service was over, he went down, he got out of the balcony, went downstairs, and he basically blew the church up. He confronted the pastor about what happened with me, and it just became very chaotic in that moment. He was trying to fight him, and everybody just kind of got involved trying to resolve that situation. And that's how my grandmother found out after the second church service. And it became a big deal. And from there, it was a lot of trauma within my family. My grandfather got involved. He was trying to take him out, and we just had to really come back together to try to settle down. We had to end up leaving the church. And from there, I was very reluctant about going back to church, period, because I just didn't know if it was a safe place for me to be because of what happened to me. And once my story came out, then a lot of other young ladies who had gone through that situation before me, they started coming out telling their stories, and then it hit the news. And so he was on the news, and because of who he was in the community, he got off very easily and got probation. Um, and he made a bargain to keep us from having to go to trial. And of course, being that young, I didn't really know how I was going to handle being in a courtroom, but I had to try to prep myself as much as I could. I did go to counseling. That was one of the things that my grandmother did. She put me in counseling to try to help me get past that experience. So it helped me to some degree, but I still had reservations. Um, and then, um, once he got on probation, then there were rumblings going around the community that he was back doing it again, but this time he was messing with boys. So I'm not sure of how accurate that story was. It was just rumblings surfacing around about what he was doing. Unfortunately, it just messed up our whole family relationship because I was close to his children as well. We all used to hang out together after church and go bowling, and that ceased because of what happened. And so I would have to say it affected me as it was time for me to move on and actually have a relationship with someone. I was kind of nervous about it. And so I would have to, I would say this, every person didn't know my story. I was careful with who I shared that with. So only a small selection of guys that I dated knew what happened to me because I wanted them to understand why I may have been reserved, with them when it came to certain things. I just wanted them to understand, if I react this way, it's because this happened. And if this is not something that you can understand and respect, you don't have to be here. But this is what happened to me, and this is what I need you to understand if I react this way. And so I didn't have any problems. You know, they were able to understand. And so it definitely affected how I started to trust people in general, how I protected my children when I started having children. I have two girls, and I'm very, very overprotective of them, especially the oldest one. I pretty much didn't let her go out too much just because I didn't want that to happen to her. And I think by me sheltering her a little too much, it kind of affected certain things with the decisions that, she made. And so I'm just learning to kind of ease up a little bit, but still pay attention, still educate my girls. And even though my daughter's grown now, I still tell her things anyway so that she doesn't get in a space to where she's taken advantage of. My youngest daughter, we don't let her go anywhere, barely let her go to a family member's house because she is a very beautiful girl and she's a little bit more, developed than, my oldest daughter, but both of my girls are gorgeous. So I have to, protect them. And sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming for them, but it's because I don't want them to experience, what I've gone through. And it be, traumatizing for them because they may not be able to recover from that the same way that I have, or their experience may be far worse than what my experience was. And so the pastor is still living. He's still living. He still pastors at the same church. Um, I have come across him a few years ago. It was very awkward. He did apologize to me for what he'd done and asked if I would forgive him. I didn't forgive him in that moment because it's just, the process of, forgiving. And in a way, it kind of messed with my marriage in a sense because, my husband is active in the church community. And one day he had to go and participate in a church service at his church. And I was very, very adamant about him not going. And of course, he knew what happened to me, but he felt like it didn't have anything to do with him, and that it was just, something that he had to do that was like a business arrangement, and he would come right back. And I have to say, we didn't get along for several days because of that. I felt like you had chosen someone who violated me over me, although it didn't happen to you. It's almost like it should concern you or affect you in some way because it happened to me. So you're gonna go, worship, fellowship actually is the word, fellowship with somebody that hurt me. What if you continue this fellowship relationship with this guy and then you bring our daughter into it, then what? And so it took us some time to get past that hurdle, but yeah, it was a very sad experience. But the way that I learned to get over it, I just started to pray about it. And then I had to realize that if I continued to carry the burden of that I would never be able to fully be as productive as I could as a surviving woman. And so I had to look at that. By me using my voice, I helped so many other females that had the same exact story from the same man, but just didn't have the courage to speak. And so sometimes, God chooses certain people to go through certain things to be a testimony for certain reasons. And those testimonies are not going to always be, a beautiful story to tell. But it's the diamond in the rough that comes from it. And so if I were to see the man again today, I think I would be able to face him from a different perspective because I've taken that power away from him in terms of putting me in a space where I couldn't function normally, as if I didn't have that experience. So I decided to not allow what happened to me have power over me so that I could live the life that I deserve to have.
Awesome, awesome. Awesome, awesome story. And I thank you for your bravery in sharing your story. I'm grateful for the victories that have come and what I believe will continue to come just by you even sharing your story. We never know who we may impact. We never know what we say may dawn on somebody years and years ago. And this is what I say about this topic, talking about sexual abuse and sexual trauma. Just because it did not happen to you specifically does not mean that you can't be a change agent in that process. That does not mean, for example, if you are a church leader and you're on here tonight and you have heard this story, that your mind can start talking into thinking and saying, okay, my church may need to do some things differently. And this is where I want to interject some things based off of what you said, because this is designed to help. This is not an indictment against any house of faith. I believe in houses of faith. I think they are great resources and tools for people to be a part of. But what I do understand is that we deal with human beings and that there are bad apples in every environment. And so, no, this isn't, oh, we're attacking the church or we're attacking mosques, we're attacking synagogues, because this is just not a Catholic priest issue. And this is what I wanted to raise up, this code of silence that houses of faith have. Just because you're not hearing it in the news, and for whatever reason, Catholic Church and Catholicism, because they're big entities, have made the news, but in mom and pop churches, in storefront churches, in mosques, in synagogue, in spiritual centers, these things happen to women and girls who, this is the focus for this, and it happens to boys just as well. Mm-hmm. What we know in the trauma world, what we know with science, what we know about human behavior, what we know about predators, and that's what they are, they build the trust of their victim.
Mm-hmm.
It is very common. So it's not uncommon to hear that in a house of faith that a predator, what the person is, built the trust of someone. Because if you think people are coming for refuge in houses of faith, this is not to say that this is everybody in a house of faith. We are not saying that at all. But I am saying is that we must be alert, we must be vigilant, and there are some things that I believe houses of faith should put in place to attempt to streamline some things. Now, is this a cookie cutter where you can just stop everything from happening? Absolutely not. We know that shouldn't happen. But even hearing your story, there are some protocols and some things that even as church leaders, church officials, what have you, should even look at. For example, if there is a youth retreat, somebody's hairy ears and nose and eyes should come up if a young person is leaving a setting and going to the pastor's hotel room or wherever they are unaccompanied and it's a minor. That should raise a flag to somebody. And so I'm just using this as this instance. We can't change anything that happened in the past, but this is what I would say for even church retreats and things that I never have some protocols in place. Maybe there's a buddy system. Even at some places in some churches, I don't even recommend that minor children are walking to the restroom alone by themselves. Why? Because everyone who comes to church is not coming to church to hear the word of the Lord. Mm-hmm. We cannot be so naive to think that everyone who walks through the door in houses of faith are there for the message. Pedophiles, pedophilias, all those things look for places to prey upon. And they're looking at places where people are not paying attention. People are caught up in the worship. Your child is in the lobby, in the vestibule. They're somewhere out there, and there an attack has happened. Should we say, oh, no, we're covered? No, don't even come with that. Be humanistic. Yes, pray, but still have common sense. You should have church security. This is what I say for churches, and I talk and I want to train more churches is you should be vetting the people that you bring on your roster as much as possible. There have been instances where I have heard that you've had people have been on the sex offender registry. This is what happens in the U.S. And I know other places may not have some of the same things the U.S. has. So in the U.S., there's a thing called a sex offender registry that if you commit a crime and you have been convicted of a sex offense, there are varying degrees of sex offenses in different states. But you have to register as a sex offender, and they put your picture up and they put what neighborhoods you're residing in. And anytime you move, you have to let persons know where you're moving and all those kinds of things. And so here where I am in the DC area, I can pull up the sex offender registry and see who's on the sex offender registry. And because sometimes people protest and don't want sex offenders in their neighborhoods. As we do know, sex offenders and people have to live somewhere. But another thing to the church is that if people are working in the youth ministry, and this is what I say, or any leadership position in the church, I say this is that you should get a police clearance and to be looking to making sure that they do not have any sex offenses. And this is where the dicey line where I've heard people come into church to say, well, God forgives everybody. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And we cannot stop people from coming to certain places. However, everybody say, however, that person may not be the person to work with kids. That person may not be the person to have a certain position. And the onus is on the head of that church to ensure the safety of all of those who are coming through the doors of the church or mosque or synagogue or spiritual center or wherever place that there is. I think what we're doing tonight should happen in ongoing church leadership trainings. These conversations need to happen. If nothing has happened in your church or mosque or synagogue or house of faith, I'll say that. Good for you. But I can guarantee you that some of the members, some of the attendees, somebody in that church has been sexually assaulted and or abused. Those are just facts. And we can't smooth past it as if the members in houses of faith have not been impacted by sexual abuse and or assault. Here in the US and globally, we're in this pandemic with COVID-19. At some point, COVID-19 will go away and it will be in our history books. Sexual abuse and assault of girls has been going on since the beginning of creation and time. For those of us who, are in houses of faith, there are scriptures where it talks about, for example, Tamar was raped by, so it's even in the Bible in certain regards. But we must do something to address it and to talk about it. And so I thank you for tonight for raising the awareness and talking about it. And you gave some certain points, and then we're going to get another piece from you. You talked about how you attempted to because for one, this person being the pastor, you had a level of trust of him initially from the beginning anyway. You weren't expecting him to do anything like that. And on some regard, survivors take the word of people, even if they hurt them, that they will not do that again, because that trust had already been there. And no one wants to look at anyone in a bad light. And this is what I want to share for those who are listening. Some may say, well, if someone hurt you, why would you go back around them again? Great point. I'm glad that you asked, because it's something that goes on in the psyche, in the brain, where you're hoping and you're optimistic that this may not happen again. They did apologize. I took their word for it. And so all those things can be extremely confusing, because in a lot of instances, that person has not shown totally to be just a bad character of person, like throughout the whole time that you knew them. Mm-hmm. So it was an isolated case in some instances for certain people. And so for sometimes that is hard in that mode. And people say, oh, well, I would do this. And this is what I'm saying in this instance. I hope no one ever has to experience this, but you cannot say what you will do in any situation because you don't know. You just don't know. And it is not uncommon for people who have been sexually abused, and women and girls we're talking about, to not even mention it.
Right.
It's extremely common. And this is why STARS GMT has been created, to allow people to come to even hear the information, even if it gets them to start even thinking about some of those things. Because the truth is, whether or not you tell someone or not, you still have the memory.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you tell them or not, you still have the memory. And I want to speed up too, because I heard you mention it, saying that it impacted you on some regards in your adulthood and dealing with relationships. And I'm glad that you said that, because that was one of my points, that the trauma can follow you throughout the lifespan. Even though it happened, whenever it happened for certain people, the memory doesn't go anywhere, and the brain holds trauma. It just does. You don't have to believe me. You can Google it. The brain holds traumatic experiences. And it is not uncommon for women to feel very uneasy in relationships that they choose to be in, sexual or not. Mm-hmm. And so you said you did something, and I thought it was very powerful, and I think it's important to do. You said you didn't do it with everybody, but you said that you told certain persons that you were dating or connecting with on that level that this is what happened on some regard, and this is why you responded in a certain way. Can you just speak really quickly to, because we're going to go to another segment of, because everybody doesn't do that. What made you feel that you need to do that in certain instances?
Okay, so I haven't had very many serious relationships. So I would have to say when I've come to those relationships, my serious relationships, those guys were privy to know that information. And of course, I had to tell them it was something that I said at the beginning of us getting close to the next step. And so, you know, it was important for me to share that because it's what I want you to know that rings very true to a person that's had this kind of experience. They're going to kind of react a certain way.
Yes.
And so for me, I felt like if I tell you this very sensitive topic to me, if I share this very personal story with you, I trust that you're going to receive it in a positive way, in an understanding way, and that you will be willing to be gentle, just gentle with my spirit, to where you don't think I'm being ugly or that, you know, I'm, you know, a loose cannonball or anything like that. This is just what I've experienced. No, I don't react the way some people do react because, like I said, my grandmother sent me to counseling. So, you know, it helped me. But again, I was 15 years old. So my 15-year-old mind is not gonna react the same way my 20-year-old mind or my 25-year-old mind or my 30-year-old mind is going to act. So although I remember some things, there was still some issues that lingered with me, primarily trust. Primarily trust. And if you came across like you were going to be aggressive with me or that you were going to start trying to be controlling, we were going to have a problem. We were just going to have a problem because now I'm going to go into defense mode to, you know, protect myself. So I think it's you cannot share this with everybody. I think your instinct is going to let you know who you can share this with.
Right.
And so it's important to be able to use your voice, use your words, and you know, let people know that when you experience certain things in your life, you're telling them from a place of trusting them enough to receive that and to be able to respect certain boundaries, you know, with you. And if they want to help you get through the process, fine. I welcome you, you know, offering some level of support, but what kind of support is it, you know?
Right.
And so I forgot to mention one of the things that happened. The board members of the church got involved, and we all had to have like this big meeting because, like I said, it hit the media circuit. And so he was a prominent pastor, you know, in the area. People knew who he was. And so you know, he was being a little sneaky recording, you know, our conversations and didn't tell anybody. And because I watched a lot of, you know, TV at the time, especially like court TV, I knew that it was illegal to record messages without everybody knowing. So I had to kind of call him out, you know, in front of everybody with that. And so it was just very difficult to do at 15 years old. You're fighting up against, you know, a very grown man. And I'm happy that I had the kind of support that I had with my family, although it broke up a lot of relationships because, like I said, it was a family church. We knew everybody. It wasn't a very big church. So it's not like you could get lost in the crowd. It was a sizable church where everybody knew everybody. And so this happening destroyed many relationships. And so but we were able to start over, at another church. And it was just different this time. And what made it different was that I always made sure I had somebody with me, period.
Absolutely.
I always had somebody with me.
And that is what goes to some of the points that I wanted, because there may be some church leaders who are here. Churches, houses of faith have to be very careful not to re-traumatize the survivor. That's what I would call them, who has been abused by someone in the church. I would not recommend as a clinician that the person who abused the survivor, that you will call them in the meeting with the person who abused them. I don't care if it's whatever board. As a clinician, that is not a best practice for houses of faith to have that, especially a minor, even an adult, to sit there and go through ridicule, questioning, and all those kinds of things.
And just to interject there,
Mm-hmm.
they were questioning me very hard too.
Okay.
They were questioning me hard, and it got to a point to where I never turned away from what I was saying. And when they saw how adamant I was and the trickery of wording that they were using to see if my story would change, I was just so adamant. And I was able to hold it together, even though I wanted to just break down and cry. But I held it together. I even went back and forth with him like it was a tennis match conversation. And when it was done and over, my grandmother got a phone call later that evening from one of the persons that was in the meeting. And the person told my grandmother, I believe her. Based off everything that I was saying. It was just so exact.
Yeah. And I say for houses of faith, if a person comes to report that, because people in houses of faith and leadership are mandated reporters. And so if a person comes to say that X, Y, and Z happened, call the authorities and let the authorities and the professionals deal with it on it. It is not the role to have deacons, ushers, whomever to question a person who has been sexually assaulted. And so that was also on my list of don't badger a person if they tell you were abused. Call the authorities immediately. Also, this is what I recommend. Do not let a person to continue to serve while they have been charged or alleged of sex crimes. It's not advisable to still have them in positions at the House of Faith. It just isn't. It's advisable to remove them from X, Y, and Z while it's going through the litigation process. And it can get very dicey, especially when houses of faith where they believe mantras that God can forgive everybody, and he can, and he does. And there's help for people who do things of that nature. And so, but it's extremely very dicey when it starts coming to still having people serve while they are going through litigation processes. Also, if they are in, because I know some houses of faith do this, they have sleepovers or, retreats and trips and all those things. This is what I recommend, that staff persons take shifts going to sleep. I recommend that there shouldn't be staff all sleep and the people who are on the trip, especially if they're minors, all sleep as well. Somebody needs to be up. Somebody needs to monitor who's going to the restroom. In my experience, I would recommend gender specific assignments, having maybe the girls on one side, the boys on the other side. For those who receive pastoral counseling services at church in the day and age that we in, and I do understand privacy and all those things, It may be in the best interest of some houses of faith to have female parishioners handling the counseling service with female members. That may be a practice that a church, a house of faith may want to put in place. There may be a practice where there's not just the head leader or the pastor or the rabbi meeting with members alone. You may have another person in there as a witness. You may not keep the door closed. You may try to have a female in the room also at all times if you're with a a member. I recommend that anyone who's working with children in the church or in any kind of position should go through a background check. Do your due diligence as the organization to rule out those offenses and certain things that you may not want to have people serving. So those are some of the points. There are so many other points that I can go through, uh, but surely don't have a code of silence.
Mhm.
I've talked to women in various countries and some African countries where, once again, the people prey on vulnerable people. They build the trust, and in some places where the leader of the house of faith is one of the most prominent people in that society. And so, unfortunately, even sometimes you have to be very careful of um, people being misled, people being brainwashed, where some leaders in houses of faith have gone to even far as saying that God would want you to do this. We must have these conversations about that. In certain places, I know in rural, even parts of Nigeria, you have where, because of economics, where you have young girls who the family actually send them to work in people's houses to get some money for the family. And the young girl goes and does like indentured servant work. And sometimes houses of faith leaders' houses, and they go there to get money. And sometimes the minor child is forbidden to talk about anything because the family needs the money so much. And it's a part of the culture where you just deal with it because we need money, and that those leaders in those communities know how vulnerable and how much money that these families need. And so they prey on that. And so this is a topic we wanted to bring up for everybody to discuss, especially of House of Faith, because so many people ascribe to various religions around the world. And we must raise the awareness and talk about it and to protect our women and girls, because gender-based violence against women and girls is very real. It happens in every country around the world. And I see someone chiming in from Australia, just even talking about how, and we'll go into our brief Q&A chat, just saying that in Australia, we have a working with children check that is required. Awesome. And so that should be required to work with children, that some type of clearance happens, fingerprinting, and the nine. And so I want you to end on your last piece, and then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. So if anybody had questions or comments, please put them in the chat box right now, because we have about, I think, what time is it? We have about 7 minutes, so we're ending on a good time. And so I want you to end on this last piece, and my prayer is that you continue to be a voice for the voiceless. That is my prayer for you. And so I turn it back over to you to do this last piece, and then we're going to have a short Q&A chat.
Okay, so the next poem that I'm going to read is inspirational, and it's called God Is, and it's basically just touching on things that people are going through in the world today. And so it reads, we are currently descending in a world where hope is no longer first. having to lean on a judicial system that puts the power of the mighty dollar first. Our families are struggling to maintain their households. It is no longer a color issue, it has now become a universal truth. We are being affected in many ways that is testing our faith. And who to trust better when the load that we carry is officially a heavyweight? There is no trust in your superior because they are just doing their job. So if you miss a few steps, you'll be getting tagged to be dismissed by the corporate mob. Men and women having to go home and look each other and their children in the face, wondering if the same place that they call home will be there from day to day. Our economic system has failed its crash dummies test simply because it is being controlled by W, which has caused us to become victims in this scandalous mess. Well, I'm here to confirm that God is hope in the time of trouble, and there is no one else to turn to, especially when the people have no valid purpose, yet they still look down at you. God is merciful as the world continues to change, looking at CNN News broadcasting another lost soul gone deranged. God is peace to a crying mother praying for her child to overcome an addiction controlled by the influences of the wild. God is love to a soul that has no understanding to this definition due to his earthly parents selfishly not realizing the purpose of their position. God is honesty when humans lie to you. His words never said that all will do right by you. Does it appear as though I'm speaking to your soul? Well, keep listening to the story unfold. God is understanding to the human mind, poisoned by the non-reality of this lifetime. I'm looking at you and you're looking at me. We're both wondering on God's earth where we're supposed to be. Pacing back and forth to make sure a critical decision is made right. Otherwise, it could be Otherwise, if it becomes wrong, you could be laying your head on that concrete tonight. God is a father to the fatherless, apart from the good man, since the shame on you male chose not to take a stand. Be strong in your faith. Even when the doors have closed, you are looking at the diary of this soul be told. From the possibilities to the sun dimming down at me, you and I are a part of this life's history. Now that I've delivered the message and I'm bringing it to the end, be hopeful in knowing that God is amazing, dear friend. But if you're still uncertain about life's pop quiz, then study no more. I've just given you a briefing of who God is. Thank you.
The infamous poetic. That is
Thank you.
so great. Ending on a high note, since we were talking about houses of faith. And let me see if anyone had any questions. We have about 3 minutes. If you had pop your questions or comments into the feed. This is our dynamic speaker on tonight, Lynette, the Michelle Lynette, and so gifted. I connected instantly when we talked on the line, and so I'm grateful for this connection. And so people will watch this on the replay. People will get the recordings of this, and I just want people to know that there is hope, no matter what storm you have in life. I do not believe that we were where God just said, "Oh, you're going to be abused." I do believe that there's just sin in the world, and things happen because people have free will. But I do believe that no matter what has happened, your tragedy can turn into your triumph. That's something that I say all the time. If you do the work, there are some women and girls who are still broken, who are still in a very low place because they have not dealt with the trauma. And you were fortunate to be able to get counseling services, but I know many in various countries where counseling services is not even an option. I know in Nigeria, for example, they only have in a lot of places psychiatric institutes. And so for so many people in certain places, houses of faith are not places that they want to turn to. And as we realize that many will go to houses of faith, there are many who will not. And so STARS GMT is to reach everybody. And it is faith-based, and we do realize that houses of faith have great resources. There are some amazing houses of faith doing amazing work in the community. I highly recommend houses of faith to have referral sources for the community. Do not attempt to have your pastor or your deacons or your rabbis or your people in the mosque attempting to provide every service for a person. You cannot do everything. You're not divine. And so have some referral basis. Have mental health professionals, have counselors come into your church. Build your church counseling. You can. And sometimes there may be a small church where you don't have all of those things. But they're community-based organizations. No matter where you go, invite somebody from the community to come into your church to do in services and workshops about these conversations. Offer small groups to your members. Some people may be more willing to come to a small group than to come to a big gathering at your church. And that is a great evangelistic tool as well. Some people may never come to your church, but some people may come to your religious institute if you're having a small group discussing how to recover from sexual abuse and assault. And so be a resource for the community. And I believe that is what houses of faith are designed to be, a resource and a beacon of light for the community. And I don't see any questions in the chat. It's our time to end, but briefly tell them, how can they connect with you on social media, your website, and so how can they also get the book?
Okay, so you can follow me on, I'm on Facebook, I have a YouTube channel, and I'm on Instagram. And all three of those platforms, I am listed under the Michelle Lynette, Michelle Lynette. And my website is www.themichellelynette.com. And in honor of us having this program tonight, there will be a 40% off discount for 24 hours for those who are interested in purchasing the book or any merchandise from the website. I think it's a good book to get because there's a lot of nice things in there that could be relatable to any person that picks it up and get a chance to read it. And also I made sure that people had an opportunity to look good while they're reading. So there's some t-shirts and a baseball cap there for purchase as well. And just to kind of leave the listeners with something to sexual assault victims. If you have been assaulted, but you are not sure how to heal, find someone that you can confide in, that you know will come to your aid and try to help you get past your trauma. I used a close friend of mine, and because her love for me, she decided to use her voice to put it out there about what was done to me. And although I was not happy at the time that it was shared, it helped so many other girls that had the experience that I had, but just didn't say it. And so I was uncomfortable at first about telling this story, but I'm a person of resilience. I've faced so many different things, and I'm standing here using my voice to encourage those that you can use your voice, you can heal, and you can go to someone to help you get past this. And you don't have to look like what you've been through. As you can see, I'm an example of that. No one would think that I've had such a trauma experience, but and I have children, and I have, a whole family, and I have close friends. And I did not let this one bad experience taint my view of how I love God, how I deal with people in relationships long term. I chose to get past it so that I could live the life that I deserve to live, and you deserve to live the life that you deserve to live too. Don't become a prisoner to the pain of your past. It's time for you to come out of that comfort zone and free yourself, because there is freedom in healing. And reach out to Tarina or myself if you just need some kind of direction to start your healing process, because everybody deserves to be happy and whole in their life.
Awesome, awesome. Great words of encouragement, great nuggets to encourage the people. And this is what Stars GMT is about, to leave away feeling empowered and encouraged. I hope to see you all next Wednesday is the last session. We have another dynamic speaker coming next week. Her name is Alyssa Campbell, and her company is called Seed and Sow, if I'm not mistaken. If you want to connect with me, you want to share, you want to talk, you can go to tarinaali@gmail.com. Please make sure you go to my website and register for next week. It's the last session. Get the upgrade experience, because there is going to be a concert afterwards. There's going to be also a music therapy session. So you don't want to miss those. You want to get this replay. But you have to get those upgrade experiences to get that, so that you'll be able to get the replay, so you can listen to this over and over and over again. We're going to talk about therapeutic writing. So thank you all for being here tonight. You could have been anywhere else, and so we do not take that lightly. And we will see you all next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It may be a different time zone for you, but we'll kick off, and it's just 1 hour. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you so much, the Michelle Lynette. You have been a
Thank you
blessing
for
to
having
me.
me. Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.